The Galactic Council chambers buzzed with the usual mixture of alien languages, pheromone clouds, and electromagnetic pulses that served as communication among the 17-member species. Ambassador Zeftar of the Kytherian Empire adjusted his crystalline breathing apparatus as he reviewed the datapad containing Earth's application for membership. "Another backwater species seeking protection under our wing," he muttered to his aide, a spider-like arachnoid whose 8 eyes glittered with amusement. "The humans, sir? Our intelligence suggests they are remarkably peaceful," the aide chittered, mandibles clicking in what passed for laughter among his kind. "Their military records show they prefer negotiation over conflict. Quite refreshing, actually." Zeftar's forearms gestured dismissively. "Refreshing, yes. Useful in the coming war with the Devastator fleet? Hardly." He tapped the datapad with one clawed finger. "Look at these numbers. In the past 50 cycles, they've had only 3 minor territorial disputes on their homeworld. 3. The Mandorians have 17 active conflicts just this cycle." Across the vast circular chamber, other delegates were having similar conversations. The Ursine Collective's massive representative, General Corvin, growled his displeasure to anyone within hearing range. "We need warriors, not philosophers. The Devastators will not be stopped by kind words and treaties." The Aquatic Federation's ambassador, speaking through her translation device from within her mobile water tank, agreed. "The humans show promise in technology and creativity, but their combat records are concerning. When the Rigelian pirates raided their outer colonies last cycle, they responded with evacuation protocols rather than retaliation. Admirable, perhaps, but not what we need when facing extinction." Commander Veloth of the reptilian hegemony flicked his forked tongue, tasting the fear pheromones in the air. "Fear makes them practical," he hissed. "But the same fear that keeps them from unnecessary violence might make them flee when violence becomes necessary." The debate continued for hours, but the conclusion seemed inevitable. Earth's application would likely be denied, not out of malice, but out of practical necessity. The galaxy was preparing for war, and humanity appeared to offer little beyond good intentions and moral support. High Counselor Marathak, the ancient ethereal who had overseen the council for over 3 centuries, finally called for order. Her voice, transmitted directly into the minds of all present, carried the weight of cosmic authority. "We have reviewed Earth's application thoroughly. While we appreciate their diplomatic approach to conflict resolution, current galactic circumstances require more martial capabilities from potential members." The human delegation sat in the observer section, their faces carefully neutral. Ambassador Sarah Chen, a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and intelligent brown eyes, showed no emotion as the criticism mounted. Beside her, Admiral Marcus Webb maintained military bearing despite the dismissive comments about his species' perceived weakness. However, Marathak continued, "We are willing to offer humanity a provisional membership. They may contribute to our scientific and medical research efforts while remaining under our protection. Should they prove their worth during the coming conflict with the Devastator fleet, full membership may be reconsidered." It was not quite the rejection many expected, but it was far from the welcome humanity had hoped for. The offer essentially made them junior partners, contributing brains while others provided the muscle for galactic defense. Ambassador Chen rose gracefully when granted permission to speak. Her voice was calm, professional, carrying just a hint of the steel that had made her one of Earth's most effective diplomats. "Honored counselors, we appreciate this opportunity to serve alongside your great civilizations. We accept provisional membership and pledge our full cooperation in the coming struggle." The words were diplomatic, proper, and gave no hint of offense taken. Several alien delegates nodded approvingly at this display of humble acceptance. But Admiral Webb noticed something in Chen's tone that the aliens missed. 3 decades of military service had taught him to read between the lines, and he caught the subtle emphasis on certain words. Opportunity to serve rather than honor to assist. Coming struggle rather than upcoming war. Small differences, but telling ones for those who knew how to listen. After the session, the human delegation was escorted to modest quarters in the Council's habitat ring. As diplomatic accommodations went, they were adequate but unremarkable, another subtle reminder of their junior status. "Well, that went about as expected," Chen said once they were alone in the shielded room. She poured herself a cup of actual coffee, one of the few luxuries they'd brought from Earth. "They think we're weak." Admiral Webb loosened his formal uniform jacket. "Can you blame them? Our public records do make us look like pacifists. The evacuation of New Sydney instead of fighting the pirates, our withdrawal from the Titan mining disputes, our negotiated settlement of the Mars independence question. All sensible decisions that saved lives and resources, Dr. Elena Vasquez, their chief science advisor, interjected. Why waste lives and materials on problems that could be solved through talking? Because, Webb said quietly, it makes other species think we can't fight when talking isn't enough. Chen set down her coffee cup with deliberate precision. The question is whether we should disabuse them of that notion. The conversation that followed would have surprised the alien diplomats. Humanity's peaceful representatives discussed military capabilities with the casual expertise of seasoned warriors. They spoke of deployment strategies, resource allocation, and combat doctrines with the fluency of a species that had been perfecting warfare for millennia. The Devastator fleet, Dr. Vasquez said, pulling up holographic displays from reportable computer. According to Council intelligence, they're a nomadic civilization that consumes entire star systems. Their technology appears to be primarily energy-based, with a focus on overwhelming firepower rather than precision. Admiral Webb studied the data with professional interest. Typical destroyer mentality. Build big, build powerful, rely on intimidation and brute force. It's an effective strategy against opponents who think the same way. But potentially vulnerable to unconventional tactics, Shin observed. The question is whether we reveal our true capabilities now, or wait, Webb said. If we show our hand too early, they might decide we're too dangerous to have as allies. Shen considered this. The Galactic Council's member species were powerful, advanced civilizations that had achieved spaceflight when humanity was still discovering agriculture. But they were also predictable in their thinking, locked into patterns of behavior that had served them well for millennia. Humanity's advantage wasn't superior technology or overwhelming numbers. It was adaptability, creativity, and a willingness to do whatever worked rather than what was expected. We wait, Chen decided. Let them continue thinking we're harmless academics and researchers. When the Devastators arrive, we'll see how useful harmless can be. 3 weeks later, the first Devastator scouts appeared at the edge of the Rigel system. The Galactic Council's response was swift and predictable. Massive battle fleets moved to intercept, weapons charged, shields raised for conventional fleet engagement. Humanity's small contingent of ships remained in the rear, officially designated as support vessels for medical and technical assistance. The 3 human vessels looked insignificant compared to the massive dreadnoughts and battlecruisers of the other species. The UES Endeavour, flagship of the human contingent, was barely 400 meters long compared to the kilometer-plus length of the Kytherian battlecruisers. Its hull was smooth, almost organic in design, lacking the intimidating weapon arrays that bristled from every other ship in the fleet. Sir, reported Lieutenant Commander Torres from her position at the sensor array, the Council fleet is moving to engage the Devastator scouts. 3 enemy vessels, heavily armed, approximately 2 kilometers in length each. Admiral Webb nodded from his command chair. Around him, the bridge of the Endeavour hummed with quiet efficiency. Unlike the dramatic displays of alien bridges with their flashing lights and dramatic announcements, the human bridge was almost serene in its calm professionalism. Maintain position in the support formation, Webb ordered. Begin full spectrum analysis of the enemy vessels. I want to know everything about their technology, tactics, and potential weaknesses. On the main screen, the Council fleet engaged the Devastator scouts in spectacular fashion. Energy beams lanced through space, shields flared with absorbed impacts, and explosions bloomed like flowers against the starfield. It was exactly the kind of traditional fleet engagement that had dominated galactic warfare for centuries. The Devastators fought with brutal efficiency, their weapons designed to overwhelm defenses through sheer power. Their tactics were straightforward: advance in formation, concentrate fire on the largest threats, break enemy lines through superior firepower. The Council fleet responded with equally traditional tactics. Ships maneuvered in precise formations, coordinated their fire for maximum effect, and relied on their superior numbers to eventually wear down the enemy. Interesting, Dr. Vasquez observed from her science station. Both sides are fighting exactly as their technological profiles would suggest. The Devastators favor overwhelming offense, the Council fleet relies on coordinated defense and superior numbers. Any surprises? Webb asked. None so far. Both sides are performing exactly as their historical combat records would predict. She paused, studying her readings. Admiral, this entire engagement is proceeding like a textbook example of conventional space warfare. Webb smiled, though his expression held little warmth. Then, they're about to learn why textbooks don't win wars. The battle raged for 6 hours before the Council fleet achieved victory. The cost was significant: 4 major vessels destroyed, 7 more heavily damaged, and hundreds of casualties. The Devastator scouts were eliminated, but intelligence suggested they were merely the advance guard of a much larger force. In the aftermath, the various fleet commanders gathered via holographic conference to discuss the engagement. The mood was grim despite the victory. "The enemy's capabilities exceed our projections," Admiral Corvin of the Ursine Collective growled. "If 3 scouts can cause this much damage, what will their main fleet do?" "We need better coordination," insisted Commander Veloth. "Our formations were too rigid, too predictable." Admiral Webb listened to the discussion with growing interest. These were experienced military leaders, veterans of numerous conflicts, but their thinking was constrained by conventional wisdom. They saw the problem in terms of more firepower, better coordination, improved tactics, all within the framework of traditional fleet combat. When asked for his assessment, Webb was carefully diplomatic. "The human contingent stands ready to support the fleet in any way possible. Our analysis of the enemy confirms their reliance on superior firepower and intimidation tactics." What he didn't mention was the complete tactical analysis his people had compiled, identifying 17 specific vulnerabilities in Devastator ship design and 43 potential tactical counters that the Council fleet had ignored. After the conference, Webb returned to his ready room aboard the Endeavour. The small space was spartanly furnished, decorated only with a few personal items and a collection of books, actual paper books, a rarity in an age of digital storage. Ambassador Chen's face appeared on his communication screen within minutes. "Thoughts on the engagement?" she asked without preamble. "They're fighting the last war," Webb replied. "Both sides. The Devastators assume overwhelming power will carry the day because it always has. The Council assumes coordinated traditional tactics will work because they always have. And humanity?" Webb gestured to one of his books, a worn copy of Sun Tzu's The Art of War. "We assume that when everyone expects you to fight one way, victory comes from fighting a different way entirely." The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Council Command. The long-range sensors had detected the main Devastator fleet, over 200 vessels, including several massive ships that dwarfed anything in the Galactic Navy. "Estimated time to arrival?" Webb asked his communications officer. 47 hours, sir." Webb nodded grimly. 47 hours to prepare for a battle that would determine the fate of galactic civilization. 47 hours to decide whether humanity would reveal what they really were, or continue hiding behind the mask of peaceful researchers. He thought about the ancient Chinese strategist whose words had guided human military thinking for millennia. "All warfare is based on deception," Sun Tzu had written. "When we are able to attack, we must seem unable; when using our forces, we must appear inactive." For 30 years, humanity had appeared inactive on the galactic stage. Soon, the galaxy would discover what that apparent inactivity had been hiding. The Devastator fleet was coming, and, with it, humanity's true introduction to galactic warfare. The massive viewscreen in the Council's war room displayed a sight that chilled even the most experienced military commanders. 237 Devastator vessels moved through space in perfect formation, their dark hulls absorbing starlight like wounds in reality itself. At the center of the fleet, 5 enormous ships, each over 10 kilometers long, pulsed with malevolent energy. High Counselor Marathak's mental voice carried unprecedented strain as she addressed the assembled leaders. "Our combined fleets number 183 vessels. The enemy has superior numbers, and our previous engagement suggests they also possess superior firepower per ship." General Corvin's massive fists clenched as he studied the tactical displays. "Direct engagement under these conditions would be suicide. We need to force them into a defensive position, use our knowledge of local space to create advantages." "The Zirian Nebula," suggested Admiral Thane of the Crystalline Confederacy, her silicon-based form refracting light as she gestured. "Its electromagnetic interference would disrupt their sensors, level the playing field." "And disrupt ours equally," Commander Veloth hissed. "A blind battle favors the side with superior firepower, which is them." The debate continued for hours, each species offering strategies based on their own military doctrines and historical experiences. The Aquatic Federation proposed hit-and-run tactics using their faster vessels. The reptilian hegemony suggested coordinated strikes at vulnerable points. The ethereal collective offered advanced sensor arrays to improve targeting. All conventional wisdom. All predictable. Admiral Webb sat quietly in the human observer section, saying nothing while his mind catalogued every proposed strategy, every revealed capability, every assumption about how space warfare should be conducted. Beside him, Ambassador Chen maintained diplomatic neutrality while Dr. Vasquez continued her detailed analysis of both fleets. "Admiral," she whispered, "I'm detecting some interesting energy signatures from the enemy vessels. Their power distribution isn't quite what it appears to be." Webb glanced at her readings, noting the subtle anomalies she'd identified. Years of human military doctrine had taught them to look beyond the obvious, to seek the patterns behind the patterns. What they were seeing didn't quite match what the Devastators wanted them to see. "Maintain observation," he whispered back. "Full spectrum analysis on all frequencies." The War Council finally settled on a defensive strategy. The combined fleet would take position in the asteroid field surrounding Kepler 442, using the rocky debris for cover while forcing the Devastators to come to them. It was sound tactical thinking, based on centuries of successful military campaigns. It was also exactly what the enemy would expect. After the council session, the human delegation returned to the Endeavour. Webb immediately called his senior staff to the secure briefing room, where Dr. Vasquez presented her analysis. "The Devastator fleet isn't what it appears to be," she began, highlighting specific vessels on the holographic display. "These energy signatures suggest that 40% of their ships are running minimal power, skeleton crews, reduced systems. They're not all combat vessels." "Support ships?" asked Commander Torres. "More than that. I believe they're colony ships, industrial vessels, population centers. This isn't just a military fleet, it's their entire civilization on the move." Webb studied the data with growing interest. Military intelligence had always focused on the Devastator's aggressive expansion, but they'd assumed it was conquest for resources. What if it was something else entirely? "They're not conquerors," he realized. "They're refugees." The implications were staggering. The Devastators weren't attacking star systems out of malice or greed, they were consuming them out of necessity. Their civilization was nomadic not by choice but by compulsion, constantly moving to stay ahead of some greater threat. "Sir," Dr. Vasquez continued, "if my analysis is correct, their actual combat strength is significantly lower than estimated. Perhaps 60% of their apparent fleet capacity. Still superior to our combined forces," Commander Torres pointed out. "In conventional combat, yes. But conventional combat is only one option." Webb moved to the briefing room's main display, calling up a three-dimensional map of the local star system. For the next hour, he outlined a plan that would have horrified traditional military strategists with its audacity and terrified diplomats with its implications. "You want to do what?" Ambassador Chen asked when he finished. "Make first contact with the real enemy," Webb replied calmly. "The Devastators are running from something, and that something is probably worse than they are. We need to know what we're really facing. The Council will never approve such a plan. Then, we don't tell them until it's too late to stop us." The next 18 hours passed in tense preparation. The Galactic Council fleet moved into position within the Kepler 442 asteroid field, spreading out in defensive formations among the floating rocks. Each species deployed according to their strengths. The crystalline ships used their natural armor to anchor strong points, the aquatic vessels took mobile positions for hit-and-run attacks, the Ursine fleet formed the heavy assault corps. Humanity's 3 ships took positions in the rear, officially designated as communication relays and medical support. No one paid much attention to the modest human vessels as they quietly maneuvered into seemingly insignificant positions. "Admiral," reported Lieutenant Commander Torres, "all Council vessels are in position. The Devastator fleet will reach weapons range in 14 hours. Webb nodded, then opened a secure channel to his other 2 ships. The UES Discovery and UES Resilience acknowledged immediately, their captains ready for the most unconventional military operation in human history. "Gentlemen," Webb addressed his fellow captains, "in approximately 6 hours, we're going to do something that will either save galactic civilization or get us all court-martialed. Possibly both." Captain Martinez of the Discovery, a veteran of the Martian independence negotiations, managed a dry chuckle. "Wouldn't be the first time, Admiral. What's the plan?" "We're going to surrender." The silence that followed was pregnant with implications. In 6 hours, while the Council fleet prepared for the battle of their lives, 3 human ships would break formation and approach the enemy under white flags. "Sir," Captain Rodriguez of the Resilience asked carefully, "are we talking about actual surrender, or the kind of surrender that ends with the enemy fleet mysteriously exploding?" Webb's smile was cold as interstellar space. "Let's just say that Sun Tzu had some interesting thoughts about the strategic value of apparent defeat." As the human ships quietly prepared for their unconventional mission, the Devastator fleet continued its inexorable approach. Their formation never wavered, massive ships moving with the confidence of a civilization that had never known defeat. But, hidden among their number, Dr. Vasquez detected something that made her blood run cold. Faint energy signatures that suggested damage, signs of recent repairs, and, most telling of all, residual traces of weapons that no Galactic Council species had ever seen. "Admiral," she reported urgently, "I'm detecting evidence of recent combat, but not with any known galactic technology. These ships have been fighting something else, something with weapons that use principles we don't recognize." Webb felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's environmental systems. "How recent?" "Within the last few months, possibly weeks." "And, Admiral." She paused, checking her readings again. "Some of these vessels show catastrophic damage that's been hastily repaired. They're not coming here as conquerors. They're coming here as the remnants of a defeated fleet." The implications hit Webb like a physical blow. The Devastators weren't just refugees from some distant catastrophe, they were the survivors of a recent defeat, fleeing toward Galactic Council space with something terrible in pursuit. "Time frame on that pursuit?" he asked quietly. Dr. Vasquez worked frantically at her console, analyzing the energy signatures and damage patterns for clues about their mysterious enemy. "Based on the repair materials and energy decay. Sir, whatever defeated the Devastators is probably no more than a few weeks behind them." Webb felt the weight of decision settling on his shoulders. The Galactic Council was preparing for one war, but they might be about to face 2 enemies simultaneously, the Devastators fleeing toward them, and whatever was chasing the Devastators from behind. "New orders," he announced to his fleet. "We're not just making contact with the Devastators. We're finding out what's chasing them, and we're doing it before the Council fleet commits to a battle that might leave us defenseless against the real threat." "Admiral," Commander Torres said hesitantly, "if we're wrong about this." "If we're wrong, we'll be court-martialed by the species we betrayed," Webb replied. "If we're right, there might not be anyone left to court-martial us." The 3 human ships began their subtle repositioning, moving away from the main Council fleet under the guise of establishing extended communication relays. Their movements were gradual, carefully planned to avoid attracting attention until it was too late for recall. Ambassador Chen joined Webb on the bridge as they approached the critical moment. "The Council is going to consider this treason," she warned. "Only if they survive long enough to hold a trial," Webb replied grimly. "Elena, what's our best estimate on the pursuing enemy's capabilities?" Dr. Vasquez looked up from her analysis with an expression of barely controlled fear. "Based on the damage patterns to Devastator ships, they're facing weapons that can cut through matter at the molecular level, shields that can deflect directed energy without apparent power loss, and propulsion systems that don't match any known physics." "How long before this mystery enemy arrives?" "Unknown, but if they're pursuing the Devastators, probably days, not weeks." Webb made his decision. In 2 hours, 3 human ships would approach the most dangerous enemy the galaxy had ever faced, not with weapons ready but with white flags flying. It was either the most brilliant tactical maneuver in military history, or the most spectacular suicide mission ever attempted. "All ships," he announced on the secure channel, "prepare for Operation Trojan Horse. In 90 minutes, we make humanity's real introduction to galactic politics." Behind them, the Galactic Council fleet waited in confident defensive positions, certain that traditional tactics and superior coordination would carry the day against the Devastator threat. They had no idea that the real war hadn't even started yet, and that humanity was about to gamble everything on a strategy that would either save them all or doom them all. The Devastator fleet continued its approach, massive ships bristling with enough firepower to level continents. But now Webb could see what others missed: these weren't conquerors coming to claim new territory. They were survivors fleeing something so terrible that even their overwhelming military might hadn't been enough to stand against it. And, whatever that something was, it was coming. The moment of truth arrived with deceptive quietude. While the Galactic Council fleet maintained defensive positions in the asteroid field, 3 small human vessels broke formation and accelerated toward the approaching Devastator armada. Council command to human vessels, came the urgent transmission. You are moving outside designated patrol zones. Return to formation immediately. Admiral Webb opened the channel to respond, his voice carrying the calm authority that had made him humanity's finest naval commander. Council Command, this is Admiral Webb. We are attempting diplomatic contact with the approaching fleet under Article 7 of the Galactic Warfare Convention. The silence that followed was telling. Article 7 was an obscure provision that allowed for parley under white flag during active combat zones. It was technically legal, but unprecedented in this situation. Admiral Webb, came High Counselor Marathak's mental voice, tight with concern. This action was not authorized by the War Council. Return to formation immediately. With respect, Counselor, humanity is operating under provisional membership status. Article 7 grants us the right to independent diplomatic action when acting in service of galactic security. Webb cut the channel before the Council could respond with orders he would have to officially disobey. Legal technicalities would only provide so much cover for what they were about to attempt. Sir, reported Commander Torres, the Devastator fleet is detecting our approach. They're not immediately opening fire. Good. Elena, any change in their formation? Dr. Vasquez monitored her sensors intently. They've stopped their advance and are forming what appears to be a defensive posture. Several of their larger vessels are moving to shield the ships I identified as non-combat. They're protecting their civilians, Ambassador Chun observed. That's not the behavior of mindless destroyers. The 3 human ships continued their approach, broadcasting standard diplomatic signals on all frequencies. The white energy shields that served as space-based white flags glowed clearly against their hulls, visible to any species with optical sensors. Admiral, Captain Martinez's voice came over the secure channel from the Discovery. We're getting some interesting readings from their forward ships. Their weapons are powered but not targeted. They're definitely confused by our approach. Maintain course and speed, Webb ordered. Elena, start broadcasting that linguistic analysis you prepared. 4 months, Dr. Vasquez had been studying intercepted Devastator communications, building a preliminary understanding of their language structure. It was crude translation at best, but it might be enough to communicate basic concepts. Broadcasting on all frequencies, she reported. Basic mathematical concepts, then, moving to simple diplomatic terminology. The response, when it came, surprised everyone on the bridge. Instead of the harsh, guttural sounds they'd expected from a warrior race, the Devastator communication was almost musical, complex harmonics that suggested a sophisticated linguistic structure. Are they singing? Asked Commander Torres. It's more complex than that, Dr. Vasquez replied, working frantically to analyze the patterns. There are mathematical progressions embedded in the harmonics, and the frequency shifts suggest multiple layers of meaning. This is an incredibly sophisticated language. Can you translate any of it? Give me a moment. Yes. Basic concepts are coming through. They're asking about our intentions, why we approach under what they recognize as a peaceful symbol. Webb leaned forward in his command chair. Tell them we wish to speak about the threat pursuing them. Dr. Vasquez quickly composed a response using their limited vocabulary, broadcasting the message with carefully modulated harmonics. The reply came almost immediately, and, when she translated it, her face went pale. Admiral, they're asking how we know about the harvesters. The name sent a chill through the bridge. Harvesters implied a purpose beyond simple conquest, something that consumed rather than conquered, that processed rather than occupied. Ask them to allow us aboard one of their ships, Webb ordered. Tell them we have information about defensive strategies. The negotiations that followed were tense and complicated, conducted through improvised translation protocols and universal mathematical concepts. But, gradually, trust began to build. The Devastators, who called themselves the Kethvar, meaning those who endure, agreed to allow a small human delegation aboard their flagship. The docking procedure was surreal. The human shuttle, tiny compared to the massive Devastator vessel, was guided into a landing bay that could have housed a small city. As Ambassador Chen, Admiral Webb, and Dr. Vasquez disembarked, they got their first look at their supposed enemies. The Kethvar were enormous, 3 meters tall with 4 arms and skin that shifted between deep blue and silver depending on the light. But what struck the humans most was not their size or alien appearance, but their bearing. These were not the savage warriors they'd been led to expect, but a people worn down by loss and fear. Their leader introduced himself as Warlord Kethmoran, a title that seemed more ceremonial than martial. Through careful translation, a story began to emerge that changed everything the galaxy thought it knew about the Devastator threat. We were not always wanderers, Kethmoran explained, his harmonic voice carrying deep sadness. Once, we were builders, creators of great cities among the stars. We had 17 worlds, billions of our people living in peace and prosperity. What happened? Ambassador Chen asked gently. The harvesters came. At first, we thought they were another spacefaring species seeking trade or territory. We tried to communicate, to negotiate, to find common ground. Kethmoran's skin shifted to deeper blue, indicating intense emotion. They did not respond to any communication. They simply began processing. Dr. Vasquez leaned forward. Processing how? They consumed everything. Not just resources or populations, but matter itself. They broke down our worlds at the molecular level, converting everything into raw materials for their own purposes. Planets, space stations, even the gas giants, everything became fuel for their expansion. The horror of it was almost incomprehensible. This wasn't war in any conventional sense, but wholesale conversion of matter from one form to another, with no regard for the life it destroyed. We fought, Kethmoran continued. Our fleets were mighty, our weapons powerful. We destroyed their first wave, celebrated victory, rebuilt our defenses. Then, they returned with ships that incorporated our own destroyed vessels, weapons that used our own technology against us. Webb felt a chill of recognition. They adapt. They learn from every engagement. Yes. Each battle taught them our tactics, our capabilities, our weaknesses. They rebuilt themselves to counter every strategy we developed. In 5 cycles, 17 worlds became nothing. Empty space where star systems once flourished. Ambassador Chen exchanged glances with Admiral Webb. This wasn't the mindless destruction they'd expected, but something far worse, a systematically adaptive enemy that became stronger with each encounter. How many of your people survived? She asked. These ships carry all that remains of the Kethvar civilization. 200 million souls, all that survived from a population of 50 billion. We have been fleeing for 3 cycles, seeking sanctuary, seeking allies who might help us make a stand. And, you chose to come here because you are the only alliance of species we have encountered that might have sufficient combined strength to resist them. But, also because we detected something in your communications, in your exploratory missions, that suggested capabilities the harvesters might not expect. Dr. Vasquez looked puzzled. What kind of capabilities? Kethmoran's expression, alien as it was, clearly showed surprise. You do not know? Your species demonstrates technological adaptability unlike anything we have encountered. Most civilizations develop along predictable patterns, energy weapons, force shields, faster than light travel. But humans create solutions that make no conventional sense. He gestured to a display showing various human vessels and technologies. Your ships use artificial gravity generated through rotation rather than energy fields. Your communication systems employ quantum entanglement in ways that should be impossible with your apparent technological level. Your medical techniques combine chemistry, energy manipulation, and procedures that seem primitive but achieve results our most advanced healing cannot match. Webb began to understand. Humanity's approach to problem solving was fundamentally different from other galactic species. While aliens tended to perfect existing technologies, humans improvised, adapted, and found completely unexpected solutions to problems. The harvesters adapt to known patterns, Kethmoran explained. They learn to counter energy weapons by developing better shields, they counter shield technology by creating more powerful weapons. But, they struggle with approaches that follow no logical technological progression. You're saying they can't adapt to human technology because they can't predict where it's going next, Ambassador Chen realized. Precisely. And, more importantly, they cannot learn from it because it does not follow patterns they can analyze and reproduce. Admiral Webb felt pieces falling into place. That's why you approached Council Space instead of fleeing further out into the galaxy. You need the combined military might of the major species to hold them long enough for human unpredictability to find a solution they can't counter. Yes. But, we are running out of time. Our long-range sensors detect Harvester scout vessels 2 cycles behind us, and their main force perhaps 4 cycles. They are faster than us, more efficient. They will arrive. Dr. Vasquez was already working on her portable computer, calculating arrival times and strategic implications. Admiral, if the Harvesters arrive in 4 cycles and they're as adaptable as described, conventional fleet engagement will be suicide. They'll learn from the Council's tactics during the first battle and be completely immune to them by the second. Unless, Webb said quietly, they face tactics that don't follow any logical pattern. Tactics that are so unconventional they can't be learned from or predicted. Ambassador Chun understood immediately. You want to reveal humanity's true military capabilities. I want to introduce the Harvesters to the concept of chaos theory applied to warfare. I want to show them what happens when you try to adapt to an enemy that deliberately refuses to follow any consistent strategy. The conversation was interrupted by urgent communications from both the human fleet and the Council forces. Long-range sensors had detected new arrivals at the edge of the system, sleek, crystalline vessels that moved with unnatural precision and purpose. The Harvesters, Keth Moran said simply, his skin shifting to the deepest blue they'd yet seen. They are here. Admiral Webb stood, his mind already shifting into combat mode. How many ships in their advance force? Their scouts always travel in groups of 12. But, Admiral, these are not ships as you understand them. They are extensions of the Harvester collective consciousness, each one capable of learning and adapting in real time. Then, it's time for them to meet an enemy that doesn't believe in real-time adaptation, Webb replied grimly. We're going to teach them that sometimes, the best strategy is to have no strategy at all. As the 3 human ships prepared to the return journey to the Council fleet was fraught with tension. As the human shuttle approached their designated positions, Admiral Webb's mind raced through the implications of what they'd learned. The Harvesters weren't just another enemy, they were an existential threat that had already consumed 17 civilizations by adapting to every conventional military strategy. Admiral, Dr. Vasquez reported from her analysis station, I'm detecting energy signatures from the approaching Harvester scouts that don't match any known physics. Their propulsion system appears to manipulate spacetime directly, and their hull composition is unlike anything in our databases. Webb nodded grimly. What about weapons? That's where it gets interesting. I'm seeing modular weapon systems that appear to reconfigure in real time. They're not just adaptable, they're actively redesigning themselves as they approach, probably based on sensor data from the Council fleet. Ambassador Chen looked up from her diplomatic console where she'd been monitoring Council communications. The War Council is demanding an immediate briefing on our unauthorized contact with the enemy. General Corvin is particularly upset about our violation of formation. Let them be upset, Webb replied. In about 6 hours, they're going to be grateful we gathered the intelligence we did. The 3 human ships rejoined the fleet formation, but not in their original positions. Instead, they took up seemingly random locations throughout the asteroid field, appearing to follow no tactical doctrine that any military strategist would recognize. Human vessels, came the sharp transmission from General Corvin, return to designated support positions immediately. Your current deployment violates all established military protocol. Admiral Webb's response was calm but firm. General, with respect, we're implementing tactical deployment Alpha 7 Chaos. Our positioning will become clear once combat is initiated. The truth was that there was no tactical deployment Alpha 7 Chaos. Webb was making it up as he went along, positioning his ships based on intuition, astronomical data, and a healthy dose of deliberate randomness. It was exactly the kind of approach that would confuse a logical enemy. Admiral, Captain Martinez's voice crackled over the secure channel. The Discovery is in position at coordinates that make absolutely no tactical sense. We're basically hiding behind a nickel-iron asteroid that couldn't stop a shuttlecraft torpedo. Perfect, Webb replied. Rodriguez, status on the Resilience? Positioned in a gravity well between 2 large asteroids, sir. Any conventional tactical analysis would say we're trapped here, unable to maneuver quickly in any direction. Excellent. Now comes the hard part. Webb opened a channel to the entire Council fleet, broadcasting on emergency frequencies to ensure every ship received his message. What he was about to do would either save galactic civilization or result in his court-martial by 17 different species. All Council vessels, this is Admiral Webb of the human contingent. I am hereby invoking Article 12 of the Galactic Defense Compact, assuming tactical command of all fleet operations under emergency battlefield conditions. The response was immediate and furious. General Corvin's roar could probably be heard without radio assistance, while Commander Velotha's hissing threatened to overload the communication systems. But Article 12 was clear: in situations where conventional command structure was compromised or inadequate, any senior military officer could assume emergency command if they could demonstrate superior tactical knowledge. Admiral Webb, High Counselor Marathak's mental voice cut through the chaos, you must immediately justify this unprecedented action. Counselor, the approaching enemy has defeated 17 civilizations by learning and adapting to their military tactics. Every conventional strategy in our combined databases has already been tested against them and found wanting. We need to fight this battle using approaches they cannot adapt to, and humanity possesses the only military doctrine capable of achieving that goal. Which is, demanded General Corvin. Organized chaos. Tactical unpredictability elevated to an art form. We're going to fight a battle that makes no sense to anyone, including ourselves. Before the council could respond, Dr. Vasquez's urgent voice cut across all channels. Enemy contact. 12 Harvester scouts entering weapons range. Admiral, they're scanning our fleet formation and, oh no. What is it, Elena? Sir, they're reconfiguring their weapons systems based on our defensive positions. In real time. I'm watching their ships literally reshape themselves to counter our tactical deployment. This was the moment Webb had been waiting for. All ships, implement Protocol Madness. I repeat, Protocol Madness is now in effect. Across the fleet, human vessels suddenly burst from their positions in directions that violated every principle of space combat. The Endeavour accelerated directly toward the largest Harvester scout, apparently intent on a suicidal ramming attack. The Discovery began spinning on multiple axes while firing in seemingly random directions. The Resilience started broadcasting what appeared to be ancient Earth music at maximum volume on all frequencies. Human vessels, General Corvin roared, what are you doing? Something the enemy can't possibly predict, Webb replied calmly. All Council ships, engage the enemy using tactics that you would never normally consider. Fight badly. Fight stupidly. Fight in ways that would embarrass your military academies. The Galactic Council fleet hesitated for precious seconds, unable to comprehend orders that went against millennia of military tradition. But the Harvester scouts were already adapting to their original defensive formation, and desperate situations called for desperate measures. The crystalline Confederacy ships, known for their precise geometric formations, suddenly scattered like startled fish. The Aquatic Federation vessels, masters of fluid tactical flow, began jerky, stuttering maneuvers that seemed random and panicked. The Ursine Collective, proud of their disciplined battle lines, broke formation and charged in every direction at once. The effect on the Harvester scouts was immediate and dramatic. Their perfect formations wavered as their adaptive systems struggled to analyze tactical patterns that didn't exist. Weapons that had been reconfiguring to counter organized resistance found themselves trying to adapt to chaos itself. Elena, Webb called out as the Endeavour continued its apparently suicidal charge, what are the Harvesters doing? They're confused, sir. Their adaptation algorithms are running in loops, trying to find patterns to counter. Their ships keep starting to reconfigure, then stopping, then starting again. Perfect. Now for Phase 2. Webb's fingers flew over his command console, implementing a plan so insane that he'd never dared suggest it to human command, let alone alien allies. All ships, prepare for synchronized randomness. Every vessel will select a different target and engage using completely different tactics. No coordination, no mutual support, no logical targeting priorities. What followed was the most chaotic space battle in galactic history. Human ships attacked with tactics that seemed designed by a committee of madmen. The Endeavour suddenly reversed course mid-charge and began retreating while firing backwards. The Discovery stopped spinning and went completely silent, drifting like a derelict until a Harvester scout approached, then exploded into violent action. The Resilience kept broadcasting music while using its scientific sensors as improvised targeting systems. The Council fleet, initially reluctant, began to embrace the madness. Kytherian ships famous for their coordinated energy barrages started firing in random sequences. Reptilian vessels abandoned their traditional hit-and-run tactics for prolonged brawling matches. Even the logical ethereal ships began doing things that made no sense. The Harvester Scouts found themselves facing an enemy that couldn't be analyzed because it refused to be consistent. Their adaptive algorithms, designed to counter logical military doctrine, kept overheating trying to process tactical information that changed faster than it could be analyzed. Direct hit on Harvester Scout 3, reported Commander Torres. Their shields are fluctuating. Because they can't decide what frequency to defend against, Webb realized. Elena, what's their status? All 12 scouts are showing signs of system instability. Their adaptation algorithms are consuming increasing amounts of processing power trying to counter tactics that keep changing before they can be implemented. But Webb knew this was only the beginning. The scouts were just the advance force, designed to gather intelligence on enemy capabilities for the main fleet. The real test would come when the primary harvester force arrived and tried to apply whatever lessons these scouts managed to transmit. All ships, maintain chaotic engagement for 10 more minutes, then prepare for Phase 3. What's Phase 3? Ambassador Chen asked. Webb's smile was cold and calculating. We're going to show them what happens when humans really stop making sense. The battle raged around them, a symphony of controlled chaos that would have given military historians nightmares for generations. Ships engaged in tactics that violated basic physics, strategic principles that contradicted themselves, and maneuvers that seemed designed to achieve nothing except confusion. And it was working. The Harvester Scouts, masters of adaptation who had learned to counter the strategies of 17 civilizations, found themselves unable to adapt to an enemy that had no strategy at all. But, even as the tide turned in their favor, long-range sensors detected ominous movement at the edge of the system. The main harvester fleet was approaching ahead of schedule, drawn by the distress signals from their scouts. Admiral, Dr. Vasquez reported with barely controlled excitement, I'm detecting massive configuration changes in the approaching main fleet. They're already trying to adapt based on data from this battle. Then, it's time for them to learn that humans have been perfecting the art of chaos for millennia, Webb replied. Phase 3 is about to begin, and the harvesters are going to discover why unpredictability is humanity's greatest weapon. As the scout battle reached its climax, the real war was just beginning. And, somewhere in the back of his mind, Admiral Webb was already planning Phase 4, a tactical approach so insane that he wasn't sure even humans could pull it off. The galaxy was about to learn that when humanity said they preferred peace, they weren't lying. They just had very unconventional definitions of how to achieve it. Turned to their fleet, Webb knew that everything was about to change. The galaxy, the destruction of the Harvester Scouts created a brief moment of eerie calm in space. 12 crystalline vessels that had once moved with terrifying precision now drifted as debris, their adaptive systems finally overloaded by tactical chaos they couldn't comprehend or counter. But Admiral Webb knew this victory was just the opening move in a much larger game. The main harvester fleet was approaching fast, and they would have learned something from the scouts' data transmissions before those scouts were destroyed. Elena, what kind of data do you think the scouts managed to transmit before we took them down? Webb asked. Dr. Vasquez worked frantically at her console, analyzing the energy patterns from the destroyed scouts. Admiral, they transmitted massive amounts of tactical data right up until the moment of destruction. The main fleet has detailed information about our ships, our weapons, our maneuvering capabilities, and... She paused, her face going pale. And, what, Elena? They have data on our chaotic tactics, sir. The main fleet will arrive already adapted to counter random tactical deployment. Webb felt a chill, but also a surge of excitement. This was exactly what he'd hoped would happen. Perfect. Now comes the real test of human military doctrine. Sir? Commander Torres looked confused. Elena, how long do you estimate before the main harvester fleet arrives? Based on their current approach vector and speed, 6 hours, Admiral. Good. That gives us time to implement Phase 4. Ambassador Chen, who had been monitoring communications with the Council fleet, looked up with concern. Admiral, what exactly is Phase 4? Because the Council is demanding answers about our tactical approach, and I need to know what to tell them. Webb stood and moved to the main display, bringing up a three-dimensional map of the local star system. Phase 4 is something we've never tried before because it requires cooperation between species that think completely differently. We're going to teach the harvesters that chaos was just the beginning. He highlighted several points around the system: the gas giant Kepler 442b, its 17 moons, the extensive asteroid field where they just fought, and the star itself. The harvesters adapt by learning patterns and developing counters. They've now experienced our chaos tactics and will arrive prepared to handle unpredictable behavior. So what do we do? Asked Dr. Vasquez. We show them that humans have something even more dangerous than unpredictability. We show them creativity. Over the next hour, Webb outlined a plan so audacious that several council species initially refused to participate. It involved using the gas giant's magnetic field as a weapon, turning asteroids into improvised missiles using gravitational slingshots, and coordinating attacks across multiple dimensional planes simultaneously. This plan requires precise timing across 17 different species with completely different technologies, General Corvin objected. The coordination alone would be impossible. Not if we don't try to coordinate, Webb replied. Each species will operate independently, using their unique capabilities in ways the harvesters have never encountered. The crystalline ships will do something no crystal-based technology has ever attempted. The aquatic vessels will break their own physics. The ethereal fleet will think impossible thoughts. You're asking us to transcend our own technological limitations, High Counselor Marathak observed, her mental voice carrying new respect for human tactical thinking. I'm asking you to be more than you've ever been before. To take everything you know about your own capabilities and throw it away, then rebuild it from scratch in 6 hours. The response was not immediate enthusiasm. Several species demanded detailed tactical analyses, probability calculations, and risk assessments. They wanted to understand exactly how this impossible plan could succeed. Webb's response would become legendary in galactic military history. If you can understand it, the harvesters can adapt to it. The only way to defeat an enemy that learns everything is to do things that can't be learned. Slowly, reluctantly, the Council fleet began to embrace the impossible. The Kytherian Empire started experimenting with energy frequencies that their own physics said shouldn't exist. The reptilian hegemony began developing maneuvers that violated their ship's design specifications. The Ursine Collective started planning charges that went in directions that geometry said were impossible. Meanwhile, the human ships prepared for their own contribution to the battle. Webb's plan for humanity was the most insane of all. They were going to fight the harvesters using weapons and tactics borrowed from every other species in the galaxy, but combined in ways that made no sense to anyone. Admiral, Captain Martinez reported from the Discovery, we've successfully integrated Kytherian energy systems with aquatic flow dynamics and crystalline targeting arrays. The result should be completely impossible. Does it work? Webb asked. We have no idea, sir. The computer says it can't work, but we built it anyway. Perfect. Rodriguez, how's the resilience coming along? We've managed to jury-rig ethereal consciousness interfacing technology with reptilian heat-seeking systems and Ursine kinetic amplifiers. The whole thing makes my engineers want to cry, but it might actually function. Webb smiled. This was humanity at its finest, taking technologies that were never meant to work together and somehow making them not just functional, but revolutionary. The Kethvar fleet, still traumatized from their previous encounters with the harvesters, watched the preparations with mixture of hope and terror. Warlord Keth Moran had come aboard the Endeavor to observe human tactical planning firsthand. Your species continues to amaze us, he said, his harmonic voice carrying both wonder and concern. But, Admiral, the harvesters have never failed to adapt. What makes you confident they cannot adapt to this? Webb considered the question carefully. Warlord, every species they've conquered fought them using perfected versions of their own technology. Kytherian energy mastery, aquatic flow dynamics, crystalline precision, all highly advanced, all extremely effective, all completely predictable once you understand the underlying principles. And humans? Humans have never perfected anything. We're too impatient. Instead, we take whatever works from anyone else, combine it with whatever we can improvise, and hope something interesting happens. That sounds chaotic. Chaos was Phase 3. This is Phase 4, Organized Impossibility. The conversation was interrupted by urgent sensor alerts. The main harvester fleet had arrived, and the sight of it was enough to shake even veteran commanders. 300 vessels of impossible beauty and terrifying purpose moved through space in formations that seemed to exist in more dimensions than normal space allowed. Their hulls shifted and flowed like liquid crystal, already adapting to counter the tactics they'd learned from the scouts.
Admiral, Dr. Vasquez reported, her voice tight with control. Preliminary scans show they've extensively modified their configurations. They're prepared for chaotic tactics, unpredictable maneuvers, and random targeting. Energy signatures suggest weapons optimized for rapid adaptation, added Commander Torres.
They're ready for anything we threw at them before.
Webb nodded calmly. Then, it's time to show them something we've never done before.
He opened channels to the entire combined fleet, council ships, Kethvar refugees, and human vessels alike.
All ships, this is Admiral Webb. In 30 seconds, we begin the most unprecedented military operation in galactic history. Each species will demonstrate capabilities that don't exist.
Each ship will attempt tactics that can't work.
Each commander will make decisions that make no sense. Admiral, General Corbin's voice carried new respect. What is our objective?
To fight a battle that has never been fought, using weapons that don't exist, according to strategies that can't work. The Harvesters have learned to defeat logic, consistency, and predictability. Today, they meet impossibility itself. The battle began not with a coordinated assault, but with actions so unprecedented that military historians would argue about them for centuries. The crystalline Confederacy ships began broadcasting frequencies that caused their own hulls to sing, creating harmonic resonances that somehow interfered with Harvester adaptation algorithms. The aquatic Federation vessels started flowing through space in patterns that created temporary gravitational anomalies, bending spacetime around their formations. The ethereal collective began thinking in mathematical concepts that hurt to contemplate, broadcasting pure logic that caused reality itself to hiccup. And the human ships began doing everything at once. The Endeavour engaged a Harvester dreadnought using 17 different weapon systems from 12 different species, all firing in patterns that violated the basic principles of combined arms tactics. The Discovery started broadcasting the collected military histories of every galactic civilization simultaneously while using its sensor arrays as impromptu weapons. The Resilience began singing, actually singing, in frequencies that caused Harvester hulls to resonate sympathetically. The effect on the Harvester fleet was immediate and catastrophic. Their adaptation algorithms, designed to analyze and counter logical tactical approaches, found themselves trying to process actions that violated the basic assumptions of tactical analysis.
Elena, Webb called out as the Endeavour somehow managed to damage a ship twice its size using weapons that shouldn't have been able to penetrate Harvester shields. What's happening to their fleet?
Admiral, their ships are freezing up. The adaptation systems are consuming so much processing power trying to analyze our impossible tactics that they're leaving insufficient resources for basic ship functions.
Are you telling me we're defeating them by confusing their computers? It's more than that, sir. We're challenging the basic logic frameworks that the Harvesters use to understand reality. They're not just failing to adapt, they're failing to function. Across the battlefield, impossible things were happening. Kytherian energy beams were bending through dimensions that didn't exist to strike targets that shouldn't have been reachable.
Aquatic vessels were swimming through vacuum as if it were ocean water, leaving wake patterns that trapped Harvester ships in gravitational eddies. The massive ursine vessels were moving faster than their engines could possibly propel them, powered by sheer bloody-minded determination that physics didn't dare argue with. But the most impossible sight of all was the human ships, somehow managing to be everywhere and nowhere at once, fighting with weapons that changed properties mid-shot and tactics that evolved faster than they could be analyzed.
Admiral, Dr. Vasquez reported with barely controlled excitement, I'm detecting cascade failures throughout the Harvester fleet. Their ships aren't just failing to adapt, they're losing basic functionality. What kind of failures?
Navigation systems trying to plot courses through impossible space, weapons attempting to target locations that exist in 17 dimensions simultaneously, shields trying to defend against attacks that are arriving before they're fired. Webb watched as the most feared enemy in galactic history began to fall apart, not from superior firepower or better technology, but from exposure to concepts their logical minds couldn't process. All ships, he broadcast, maintain impossible tactics for 15 more minutes, then prepare for Phase 5.
There's a Phase 5? Ambassador Chen asked weakly.
Phase 5 is where we offer them surrender terms, Webb replied with the calm satisfaction of a plan perfectly executed. Because the one thing more impossible than defeating the Harvesters is convincing them to stop running and start building. As the battle reached its climax, the greatest war in galactic history was ending not with the destruction of an enemy, but with the birth of something unprecedented, the first alliance between species that thought in completely different ways, united by the discovery that impossibility itself could be weaponized.
The galaxy would never be the same.
And, somewhere in the back of his mind, Admiral Webb was already wondering what humanity would be asked to do next. After all, they'd just proven that when humans said they preferred peace, they weren't lying. They'd just found a way to make war so impossible that peace became the only logical option. Even for a species that had forgotten how to think illogically.